This is the story of disability history and the social model by Jessica Panico, created for middle school students. Disability defined. A disability is any physical or mental condition that makes life more challenging. Disabilities limit a person's ability and can affect the body, mind, vision, hearing, communication, learning, and thinking. Disabilities make it more difficult for the person to participate in everyday activities and society. There are two main models of disability, the medical model and the social model. In medicine, a patient's inability to perform an activity because of some physical or mental disorder is called disability. This model focuses on fixing a person's impairment. The social model views disability as a part of life and is accepting of differences. This model believes that society creates disabilities by creating barriers that restrict or exclude individuals with impairments. Therefore, the environment disables the individual and is what needs fixing. Both models recognize that everyone will, at some point, experience disability either through illness, accident or injury, birth, poverty, war, or old age. These images show that people with disabilities can include injury-related disabilities like a broken leg, or congenital disabilities such as cerebral palsy that can occur at birth, intellectual disabilities such as Down syndrome, the visually impaired or blind, and old age. The last picture is of my family celebrating my grandfather's 90th birthday. Now we're going to take a look at the history of disability and the disability rights movement. Prior to the civil rights movement of the 1960s, people with disabilities had few rights. Many were treated poorly, they were made fun of, laughed at, or mocked. They were forced to live in hospitals or asylums. The image on this slide is a painting from 1735 by William Hogarth. This painting belonged to a series called A Rake's Progress. The title of this painting is The Madhouse, and it represents a mental asylum. Although the image is upsetting, asylums and institutions for people with mental and physical disabilities were common, and the conditions were very poor. Here, we're going to look at the history of disability rights. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act. Advances in science, medicine, and technology, in addition to the Civil Rights Act, empowered people with disabilities to fight for equal rights and change. This led to the 1973 Rehabilitation Act. These were the first laws passed to protect the civil rights of people with disabilities. Then, in 1975, we have the Education for All Handicapped Children. This act required all public schools accepting federal funds to provide equal access to education and one free meal a day for children with physical and mental disabilities. The Fair Housing Act of 1988 prevented the discrimination of people with disabilities in housing sales, rentals, or financing. The Disabilities Education Act of 1990 ensured that students with disability are provided with free, appropriate public education that is tailored to their individual needs. The Americans with Disability Act of 1990, also known as ADA, protected people with disabilities and ensured equality in employment, government services, telecommunications, public buildings, and transportation. In 1993, we have the National Voter Registration Act, which ensured that people with disabilities were able to vote. The Telecommunication Act of 1996 required telecommunication products and services to be accessible to people with disabilities. Let's take a closer look at the ADA. The Americans with Disability Act, or ADA. On July 26, 1990, President George H.W. Bush signed the ADA. The ADA was created and signed into law to protect and help people with disabilities equally participate in society. The ADA established a set of guidelines for public facilities to provide so that people with disabilities would have equal access. It also protected people with disabilities from discrimination. Now we're going to look at the impact of the ADA. It reduced discrimination. improved access to public spaces, improved job opportunity and made work easier, improved building accessibility by including ramps, elevators, and automatic doors. It provided sign language interpreters. The ADA made government, business, and society responsible for providing accessibility. This goes back to the social model because the social model believes that society creates the disability through a variety of social barriers. These barriers include both physical and emotional challenges that prevent people living with impairments from being able to fully participate in their environment, causing the disability. Therefore, this model believes that society needs to look at their role in increasing accessibility. Before we look at how to increase accessibility, let's first look at some of the barriers. These are some of the barriers that discriminate against people with disabilities. Overstimulated classrooms or library spaces, inaccessible buildings, remote learning for special education students, website content that does not accommodate for the visually impaired, or physical barriers like books that are too high for people with disabilities to reach. Now, these are some of the ways we can change in order to make our community accessible to all. We can create organized and easy to navigate spaces. We can build ramps and have elevators, in-person learning, assistive technology for the visually impaired, and accessible spaces and furniture. We all deserve equal access and opportunity. How can you help? Thank you. This presentation was created by Jessica Panico.